It's my feel-good breakfast show.
That's right. Although it is still a bit chilly in some parts of the country, it's the first day of September, and that means the winter blues are officially over and spring has sprung. Can I get a whoop whoop? But of course, with the advent of spring from September to November, it's often a particularly miserable time for allergy sufferers. Just as winter ends and the tree blossoms appear, asthma, hay fever, allergic conjunctivitis, and even eczema begin to flare up. So with us in studio to tell us how we can stay healthy in spring is multimedia health specialist Dr. Darren Green. How are you, sir?
I'm fabulous, thank you.
It's good to see you. I'm very, very happy because spring is here, but I know a lot of people are struggling. Let's start with hay fever. Let's talk about the effects. How does it happen? How does one treat it?
Well, people that suffer from allergies and hay fever are people that have an overactive immune system. In other words, they have an eager beaver immune system that as soon as they're exposed to an allergen or a trigger, they have basically a response to that pollen or that, you know, the trigger in terms of foods, for example, where your immune system launches an attack to try and neutralize that trigger. So what happens is that over-eager immune system just releases a whole lot of chemicals into the bloodstream, causing histamine release and anti-inflammatory markers and so forth. And that leads then to itchiness, to the running eyes, the tearing eyes, the runny nose, the scratchy palate and throat, the post-nasal drip, and so forth. And, you know, that's when things get out of hand, because that's when you end up having sensitivity of your airway, and asthmatics are more prone to bronchospasm, etc., etc.
So how does one treat a seasonal allergy like hay fever?
I think when you know it's coming, prep for it. In other words, you must limit your exposure to the things that you know trigger the allergies. So most people are tested by a simple blood test, and they know they're allergic to house dust mite being a big one, grasses, Bermuda grass, horse, cat and dog dander, pollen and certain plant types, etc. So limit exposure to it. In other words, when the pollen counts are high, limit your exposure to those areas, for example. Also look at taking your chronic meds beforehand, the things that prevent allergies. Your antihistamines daily, those nasal sprays that we all buy and keep and hate using when we're not symptomatic. But it's about prevention, so we actually need to keep that going. And then keeping the membranes of the nose and the airway moist and nourished is also important, because if they dry out, etc., they precipitate skin conditions and itchiness and other inflammatory responses.
What about other seasonal allergies, not just hay fever? How would one treat those?
Well, often people go for what's called the allergy shot, which is actually a steroid shot that they get intramuscularly in their buttocks, and that often then holds them out for about 2 to 3 months. The problem with that is the amount of steroid that is released is not controlled, and you can't predict it always, and people have a variable response to it. Most doctors make the error of prescribing too little of the drug. In other words, they don't work out the milligrams per kilogram correctly of the patient they're treating. Other than that, desensitization, just like in bee stings, for example, where you expose someone to the toxin of the sting gradually, allowing the immune system to grade a response to it. That's also done with specific allergies. And if you're going horse riding and you're allergic to horses, certainly remember to pop an antihistamine beforehand.
There we go. Definitely. Prevention is better than cure, right? That's what they say. Well, we will be catching up more with Dr. Darren Green after the break. If you want to talk to him about allergies, if you do suffer from them, you can give us a call on 083-913-3728. We'll be taking your calls after the break. We're also going to be heading to the kitchen where we make a delicious strawberry shortcake.